Hi and welcome. I'm Sarah Peternell, owner of Family Nutrition Services, and today I want to share with you about a story that is really personal to me and is also really common among a lot of my clients. The story really is dealing with the common misdiagnosis or not caught soon enough concern with postpartum thyroiditis. I am definitely on a mission to make more pregnant women and more providers of pregnant women understand this situation, and also to be more cognizant of the risks and the reality that women face with postpartum thyroid inflammation and with postpartum thyroid autoimmunity. So when I was pregnant with my first child, I had already been diagnosed with Hashimoto's. In fact, I was diagnosed in 2001, and then I became pregnant after we had our first miscarriage. And then I was so happy because we were going to have a little boy. And I was being monitored for my thyroid, and my medication was being adjusted by the midwife team that was caring for us throughout my pregnancy. And I was having my TSH levels tested, and I was having my medication adjusted as needed. This was all kind of really before I was super savvy about how to take care of myself as someone who has Hashimoto's. I still had some fairly low but active antibodies to my thyroid gland, and I hadn't been educated. I hadn't educated myself or done any of the research, and I hadn't worked with any holistic practitioners yet to learn about what having Hashimoto's might do to affect me during pregnancy or afterwards. So my beautiful son Clay was born January 15th of 2008, and he was just the sweetest little, most perfect little guy. And he was beautiful. He was 8 pounds, 13, almost 14 ounces, so he was big. And his birth turned out to be, a little different than I think we thought it would be, but in no ways would I change anything about it. In the days that followed, after giving birth to Clay, I kind of fell apart, to be honest with you. I was kind of waxing and waning between extreme depression and really high levels of anxiety. When we left the hospital, I don't think I was feeling this yet. It took a few days to kick in. Right around the time that my milk came in was kind of when my body started to shift. I could feel and could tell that something was not right, but there was a big part of me that actually thought that what I was experiencing was normal. And I think a lot of women feel this way. I also thought that it was normal because I had just had a baby, and that I was just nervous, and that was just my personality, and that was just the way it was going to be because I just had a baby and I didn't really know what I was doing. If you've had a baby, we all kind of feel that way. We don't know sometimes what's going on with our emotions and what's going on physiologically, if there is a connection or if there is a distinction that we need to be making. And I will also say that the timeline in which your care providers follow up with you after you give a baby is way too long. 6 weeks is way too long. To wait to get that green light, all they're basically telling you is that you can have sex now and exercise. But they haven't checked on all the other things that a woman or a new mother needs in those postpartum days. So my postpartum thyroiditis looked like an extreme shift to hyper-thyroidism. But unfortunately, this wasn't translating into weight loss for me, so people probably weren't picking up that this was the case with my thyroid. A lot of women lose a lot of weight quickly when they leave the hospital and they start breastfeeding. That was not the case for me. I was not losing weight quickly, but I was experiencing heart palpitations, extreme anxiety, sweating. I could not sleep. My mind was racing. I felt dizzy. I felt scared. I actually felt nervous and scared a lot of the time. I remember having a feeling of holding my little son Clay when he was just a couple weeks old against my chest and holding on to the walls with my other hand because I was afraid that I was going to fall and that I was going to drop him. And I was experiencing not only a sharp drop in my TSH, meaning that I had gone so hyperthyroid that my TSH level was almost undetectable. I hadn't had the chance yet to be evaluated by my doctor, and I hadn't been, my medication had not been reduced. So I was taking a T4 medication at the time. I was taking levothyroxine or Synthroid, and my body was also having a resurgence of my own hormone production following the birth of my child. On top of that, I was also having the autoimmune inflammation or the attack on my thyroid that was taking place as the hormones had shifted in my body after giving birth to Clay. So my inflammation was really high. I kind of felt like I was on the verge of getting really sick. I just felt achy all over. I felt exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. I felt wired and tired. I was hot and sweaty and cranky and irritable, and I kind of just felt like the world was caving in around me. I felt like I was afraid to drive anywhere with him because I felt like my body was out of control. This lasted for a really long time. My son was also colicky, so I need to mention that as well. I had trouble with producing enough breast milk to feed him. He was a big boy, and I was kind of hell-bent on feeding him only breast milk. That's what I believed was the best choice. But I was eking out 1 to 2 ounces at a time with feedings, and then I was trying to pump, and I was doing this around the clock, feeding and pumping, feeding and pumping, feeding and pumping, on top of everything else I was already feeling. So you can imagine, and if you've been there, you know that this is a pretty stressful and crazy time in a woman's life. And Hashimoto's can be also discovered and diagnosed in this period. For a lot of women, they may not have any prior history of thyroid issues. They may have a family history, or they may have just experienced some periods of hypothyroidism, but maybe not the thyroiditis or autoimmune attack on the thyroid gland. Women need to be checked out by their providers much sooner than 6 weeks. That thyroid needs to be checked, especially if a woman is feeling symptoms and is strong enough and brave enough to come forward, both to her loved ones and to her providers, to let them know that something is wrong. I think there's a huge stigma around postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and with that postpartum other issues like postpartum thyroiditis. And I have experienced this obviously for myself, but I've experienced it and lived it with so many of my clients as well, who have said, gosh, when this first started happening for me with my thyroid was right after my child was born. So when I went into my 6-week visit and they did a thyroid check, I remember the nurse midwife's eyes were like kind of, oh boy, and she referred me back to my endocrinologist. And then I started getting the care that I needed. But that was 6 weeks of hell. I am being fully honest with you. I also gave myself permission to start supplementing my baby with formula. And I researched and learned and taught myself how to make homemade baby formula according to the Weston A. Price tradition of making homemade baby formula, because I felt that it was the second best thing to breast milk after I had researched some of the ingredients in some of the commercial baby formulas. This period of time was another huge growth period for me, learning about holistic health, learning about holistic nutrition, and learning about the kinds of choices that I wanted to make for myself and for my family as I progressed along my journey. So everything ultimately ends up having kind of a silver lining, if you will. But in addition to some of the struggles that we went through with miscarriage and infertility, also the postpartum period was a really challenging and really informative time of our lives as a young family, learning about what it was that was afflicting me, and that was that my thyroid had gone into major overdrive. By the time those symptoms resolved and my medication was removed and my symptoms were kind of allowed to wane out on their own, it was about 6 months before I started feeling normal again. And then guess what happened? I went extreme hypothyroid. I went the opposite direction. So all the time, where I was just barely hoping that I could get out of feeling so frazzled and so crazy, I went to the opposite end, which was hair falling out and depression and fatigue, and couldn't lose weight and had aches and pains all over my body, much like I did with hyperthyroidism. The struggle for women in the postpartum period is really real. And again, I would just encourage you, if you're a nurse midwife, if you're a doula, if you are watching this, if you are an OBGYN, if you are a holistic health provider that deals with women in pregnancy and in the postpartum period, please, please, please schedule time with these women a little closer to the date of their giving birth, maybe 1 or 2 weeks afterwards. Check in, see how they're feeling. Bring them into the office and check their vitals and ask some of the hard questions. If you are a woman going through this, please speak up. Please reach out for help. Share this with your spouse, with your loved ones, with a medical provider that you trust, and get help sooner rather than later so that you don't have to suffer, and so that you can experience the joys and the happiness of being a new mom and going through the craziness of just having a baby by itself without all the other complications of your thyroid causing more problems for you. So I have written a blog post about this. It is on my website, and you can find the link to that article in the pinned comments down below or in the description. You may want to check out some of my other videos that I have about Hashimoto's. If you're new here to my YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe, and that way you'll get notifications each Tuesday when I post a new video. But go ahead and check out some of my other Hashimoto's videos because there's lots of information. All of these are coming from my own perspective, my own experiences, and I'm so thankful and honored that I get to share these things with you all here in this forum. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and please take good care of yourself. If you're about to have a baby or if you've just had a baby, please know that there is support out there waiting for you, and that you can feel really good again soon, okay? Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you soon.